Today I'm going to illustrate 3 methods of cooking meat. The first is grilling on a grilling pan that has a grid so that the fat can fall through. I have grilled a fatty lamb chop and a piece of boerewors, which also contains a large amount of fat. These I have grilled under the element of the stove. Here I have a piece of tenderized steak, which had no visible fat showing, and I have used a heavy based ribbed frying pan with a little bit of fat in it to fry my steak. It's not recommended to fry fatty meat. And here I have roasted chicken pieces. I rolled the chicken pieces in seasoned flour, and then I put them in a roasting dish and poured a little bit of fat over them, and during the cooking process I turned the chicken over so that it could roast on both sides. I'm going to illustrate how to grill and fry meat. You take a grilling pan which has a grid so that the fat can drip through into the bottom pan. You spray it with spray and cook, and you place fatty pieces of meat. This is a seasoned lamb chop. Has a lot of fat on it, and you place it on the pan, and also a piece of boerewors. I'm now going to place this grilling pan in the oven about 15 centimeters from the grilling element, and I am going to allow the meat to become quite brown on the one side before I turn it over using cooking tongs. Here I have my top shelf at about 15 centimeters from the grilling element, and I'm going to place my pan with my meat underneath the heat source. Remember not to close the oven door, but leave it slightly open for ventilation purposes, and also so that you can make quite sure your meat is not burning. The grilled meat is ready to be turned, so I pull the rack towards me, hold the pan, and flip the pieces of meat over. You can see that the distance from the heat source is correct because the meat is not cooking too fast. Push it back in and partially close the door. Here I have a piece of tenderized steak which has no visible fat on it at all. I am now going to fry this meat in a little bit of fat in a ribbed pan. And as you notice, I'm using a pair of tongs. We use tongs when working with meat, when turning meat, so that we do not pierce holes in the meat, causing the juices to leak out and causing the meat to become dry. Wait for the meat to sear, and then you can flip it over. When you have turned the meat over, you can put salt on the cooked side. Do not put salt on the raw meat if you're going to fry or grill it, because the salt draws the juices out. This piece of steak is now done. It will be slightly pink inside, as we don't want to overcook it. I am going to demonstrate roasting to you now. The most important thing about roasting is that there is no cover over the meat, and we usually take the meat and roll it either in flour or in salt and pepper to season it before we roast it. Here I have chicken pieces which I have washed. You remove any feathers still attached, and you roll it in some seasoned flour. This flour has salt and pepper in it, and you place that into a roasting dish on very little oil. Chicken must be clean and well prepared. Here I have some chicken thighs, which I'm going to roll in the flour. When they're well coated, place them in the dish. I'm going to add a little bit more oil. I'm going to drizzle a little bit more oil on the chicken. And I am going to put this into the oven on the middle shelf at 160 degrees Celsius for an hour. Halfway through the cooking process, I am going to turn the chicken over. If this was a large whole chicken, every 10 minutes or so, you would take a long-handled spoon and you would lift the fat and pour it over the chicken. This is a process known as basting, and with large pieces of meat, whether it's pork or lamb or a whole chicken, you would baste every 10 to 15 minutes until the cooking period was over. The chicken that I have been roasting needs to be turned. I'm going to pull the rack towards me, and using my tongs, I'm going to turn my chicken over. And then push the rack back in and allow the chicken to cook for a further half an hour.